it's so nice to see people returning. Thank you so much for sticking with these events. And I know that there's an excitement and a momentum, and then it's like, you kind of start to be like, is it almost over? But there's that part of you that's like, but I want all the information that I can get. And I totally.
And we were just talking about that just before we let you guys in. We were just talking with Mel. So for those of you lucky enough to be in this Zoom room,
welcome to
watch this space. Watch this space for this.
This is going to be fun. I don't know. Is it going to be fun? You like my shirt. Thank you. It's a jelly. And there's a company called supermaggie.com. Relevant information for our session. But I appreciate when people notice fashion. I am a New York woman. It's a thing.
Medusa, come on, Medusa. You can't beat Medusa.
Yeah.
She's the ultimate archetype of trauma, Medusa.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh, I can't wait to hang out with Virginia someday in person.
So I've got a girl crush on Mel, right? I'm big girl crush here. Big girl crush.
It goes both ways.
And we're on time. And I'll be serious now. I'll do my tech hosting bit. I've got my notes, people. So I'll start record. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Why You're Afraid to Open Up. A session on trauma and vulnerability with a badass New York body witch, Melissa Gutierrez. Melissa's metal has been forged by childhood violence, toxic relationships, financial insecurity, and harmful. It says harmful. I dispute that. Perfect type A perfectionism. She is now a coach that teaches others how to reclaim their power through movement and witchcraft. Yes, we said witchcraft. She's dedicated. No animal slaughters. No blood sacrifices of human beings. All right, none of that. She's dedicated to helping people leave their dreams and prosper and heal their trauma. I'm Virginia. I won't speak for much of this. You'll get Mel. I'll be tech hosting in background. You can private message me with questions about technical stuff. As ever, if you're joining in for the first time, where have you been all week? There's so many sessions gone, but you can catch the replays. But thank you for being here. Thank you for getting the access pass. Do tell a friend. There is still time. Don't leave it till next Thursday or Friday when the replays will be over, and it will all be over, and you'll be like, oh, this was really good information. I wish you had joined in. Tell them now. There is still time. They can catch the replays. And there is a course coming up. I'll just take a little bit of Mel's session to share about the course, because the course is good. I was watching. I started doing it myself, so I could be authentic in saying how good it is. I love Ilan. Ilan is not the only one out there, but I really am a big fan, and you can get 3 different tiers. So depending on where you're at and what you want to work on, you can heal your trauma. This is the basic, the essentials, going from just going to be okay in your day-to-day life, not freak out when, the washing machine breaks or something, which happened to me. This is just $49, and we wanted to make it accessible to everyone. It's not a normal price. And here it says 412 places left. That's not the case. Those places have been going down, but you still have time to get it. And then if you want to go from good to great, is the personal superpowers course. And there's more content. There's live Q&A sessions. So again, this will double in a while. This is the early bird price. And if you are a facilitator and you deal with people, if you're a therapist, a coach, a body embodiment teacher, this is the one for you if you want to help yourself and your clients access the superpowers. So there's loads of content here. There's 4 tutors to choose from and small groups, up to 25 people per group. So you get that in-depth engagement and Q&A sessions and everything, a lot of bonuses as well. So do consider this depending on where you're at your healing journey, and do access the links that I'll put in the chat in a moment for those. As always, make sure you're resourced. Are you doing the kind thing watching this now? Are you okay to watch it? If not, stop, breathe, go for a walk, do what you need to do. And if you're in a space with children, maybe headphones are a good idea. Mel is a New Yorker. There will be interesting language. Also for confidentiality, make sure you're not disturbed for this session. And with that, I'll shut up. I think Mel talked enough.
I am always so grateful to Virginia and her professionalism. It starts to create a nice container for all of us. So thank you. And I'm sorry about your washing machine. That sucks. That causes stress for sure. So welcome everyone. And I just wanted to scan through. I've been looking at all your beautiful faces. And I mean that really sincerely, beautiful because you're here and because you're willing to do some uncomfortable work. So if you really want to get the most out of this 25 minutes that we're going to try to shove as much growth into this as we can, then turn on your camera and join me in being vulnerable. It's a request. Try to be vulnerable with me. So usually I like to start these sessions with some grounding work and feeling your body, but for a specific reason, I'm going to kind of launch into something before we do a little bit of grounding and breathing. But I would like for you to think about what vulnerability means to you, because it kind of runs the gamut in terms of experience of what can make us feel vulnerable. And there's not always a positive connotation. In fact, the positivity in talking about vulnerability as a power, right, as a superpower or as a place to come from that's powerful is more recent. So I would like to see in the chat what vulnerability means to you and where you feel it in your body or how it shifts your state of being. So I'm going to give you a little time to do that, and I'll just tell you what it means to me. Well, okay, how about this? Let me be very transparent. I don't love being vulnerable. It fucking sucks. It sucks. Like, now, do I agree? As a smart woman, right? Do I agree that being vulnerable is powerful, is smart to practice, is a way to get the information we need? All the things Brene Brown has said about vulnerability, for those of us who are Brene Brown fans, all the things we have recently learned about the power of coming from this like open space. We know it's powerful here, right? I know that it's good to practice, but it sucks. It sucks. It doesn't feel initially good, right? At first, to be really vulnerable, to be open. I'm a Cancer in the zodiac chart for anybody who cares and relates to those archetypes. And I see people going like, I get it. And I definitely feel like the hard outer shell and being like hiding my little soft crabby insides. And I'm like, no, don't touch that. Don't see that. And I love controlling everything in my life, my environment, my finances, my fitness, my everything. And that's a really great way to avoid being vulnerable. I'm just going to own that right now. That is a great way of just being like, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing in, behind the curtain. Don't look too closely. Oh, I hate it. And particularly in the context of romantic relationships, it's like the worst. Like, I have friends who are so good at this, and they're like, oh my God, I met somebody, Mel, and I'm so excited, and I have all these great feelings, and I'm like, oh, I met somebody and I'm feeling things for them. Oh, and I get so resentful and I hate it because it makes me feel, and I start to open up. But I have to remember in these moments how important it is to be vulnerable, to do that work. I want to discuss that in a moment. And I wanted to kind of go in raw. I wanted you guys not to be necessarily grounded and feeling in your best powerful self and then come to vulnerability. Because honestly, vulnerability is going to show up at any time. At any time. So I'm just going to look at the chat real quick. Ooh, Ooh, good things. Thank you for standing with me, folks. For those of you who are like, yeah, I don't love it either. This is Yasmin, standing completely open to my sensitivity. Yep. And softness, fully in the presence of others. Oh, feels like an egg without a shell. That's like one of the most perfect ways to talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability means fear. Yeah, it's scary. It's paralyzing. Fear on my chest. I feel that. Some people say it's an open feeling in the front torso. Yeah, because there's that sense of like exposing yourself or opening your heart. It can, like we can play with these archetypes, and we will, these ideas, these come to us, these visualizations. My ego hates being vulnerable. Oh no, really? Just you? No, everybody. My ego hates it too, David. I fucking hate it. Feeling okay when tearing up. Seems like people who are not vulnerable have very surface relationships. That's smart. And not deep connections, and don't get their needs met because they don't share them. Well, that was insightful. I shouldn't be leading this one. that was really insightful. So we're all kind of on the same page, right? Someone can harm you when you're vulnerable. We're gonna dig into that one. I really like that. Who feels that on an instinctive primal level, and you can either raise your hand or use your emoticon on the Zoom or put in the chat box, who here feels like being vulnerable is stupid and dangerous? Some people are like, should I be honest? Yeah, so I like this. Maybe, right? Feels very exposing, like armor has been stripped away. Yep, putting the protective shield away, being properly seen. Okay. Yep, okay, got it. Yep, you're open to judgment and criticism, and having vulnerability used against you from people who are not careful with your heart and your information. There's so much that comes up in this, right? We're all feeling it. Is it worth the risk? Someone said it's dangerous, though not stupid. Okay, so you can see that I'm being really transparent in this, that vulnerability is a practice. We can agree to that, right? Being vulnerable, choosing to show up a certain way, choosing to show up honestly with what your needs are, what your desires are, that's a form of vulnerability. Just being honest about what you want and what you need. And it's an authenticity that people respond to. And there is truth from, I would say, aggregated information from social work studies, that people who are able to feel and not immediately repress their vulnerability and can step into it and share it with others do have these really deep and intimate connections with people around them, and not just in a romantic sense. Like there's just the ability to really connect. So think about that for yourself right now. Who can you connect with, even in your mind right now, where you feel the safest, where you could say whatever you wanted to? I'm very blessed. I have really close girlfriends that I can go, I can talk to them about anything and say the ugly shit and go, I'm going to say something and I don't have smart language for it. And I'm just going to, and they don't judge. Or if they do judge, they're like, okay, that might be hard to hear, but let's work through it. Like it's a safe place to practice being vulnerable. I'm looking here. I still feel stupid when I have to be. Pressure in my throat. Yes. Feels like choking. Someone, oh, okay, so you feel safest with your cat. You're not the only person. I know many people feel safest with their cats. I'm by the way, just full transparency, because everybody's like, you're a witch and you like cats. I don't like cats. I will never understand the human need to relate to an animal that just, I'm sorry, Virginia, that just is willing to scratch your face off at any second, despite the fact that you house it and feed it. And I know people are gonna be like, but my cat's not like that. So Virginia's like, we're gonna have a conversation about cats after this. Seems there are several definitions of vulnerability. One is more like being open and transparent, in touch with feelings and revealing them. And the other is actually in a situation where one can be harmed, like it's, say, in an abusive relationship. Now we're getting to some of the nitty gritty here. Let the shit hit the fan, not you. Oh, that's good. I like that. Like, I don't need to over-identify with the stuff that I share with others, right? I think that's what we're saying here, Fiona. Okay, so let's talk about why it's helpful to be vulnerable, right? Let's start to shift the conversation a little bit. So we've all identified as human beings that it is a difficult proposition. Most of us have been through enough shit in our lives at this point to go, I don't know if I really want to be that open. And that's fair. Fear is a healthy response when you have been open before and it's been maybe used against you, information you've shared with people has been used against you, trust that you've placed in someone has been broken, there's been a sense of betrayal. Those are the experiences that'll really lock you up. Physically, brace you, emotionally, make you form a little bit of that shell. And that's fair, right? That's a fair response. And there's the opportunity to learn from those experiences. So, as someone who hates being vulnerable, who doesn't like the practice, but chooses to practice because I know I will have a deeper sense of connection with the people I want to have it with, I will be able to be more aware of my own feelings and therefore be able to handle them and show up in a way that I want to, right? Because being vulnerable means feeling, but you can't show up with all the information you need about yourself in a self-awareness way if you can't feel it. And that's true. Think about people you know who refuse to be vulnerable. And that can actually get very dangerous and very toxic. And have you noticed that some of those people may be in the worst, or I would say the most malignant manifestation of refusing to be vulnerable, are not only kind of blunted and cut off with their ability to empathize with others, but there's a willingness to not see how they affect other people also. It starts to blind you to your connections and to how you affect people. And then that becomes dangerous because then you're like, I can't even admit to being wrong, or I can't admit that I've hurt somebody and I can't course correct and I can't pivot and learn. So vulnerability also means being able to be honest about yourself, how you affect others, and how you can learn from those experiences. And when I, for myself, put the practice of vulnerability in that framework, it feels more worthwhile. Does that make sense? Can you put in the chat what you believe could motivate you to practice vulnerability, even when you're resisting it, like hardcore, when you're like, no fucking way. When that voice is like, no way, I've been there before, I'm not doing it again. There is something to gain from that. So if you can think of something, put it in the chat box, because this is going to be your anchor. And for me, what motivates me is that availability to gather information so I can be better as a person and better for the people around me. So I see here a chance of connection. That's also true, right? These are all important, and it's not about qualifying them. It's just, what do you connect with most immediately right now in terms of, well, this could motivate me to be more open and honest with somebody. Learning. Setting a good example for my kids. Ooh, parents, my respect, all my respect to parents, but yeah, your kids are watching and they're modeling, even at the youngest age. You don't have to say a word, and they start to pick up and model about how to be in the world. And vulnerability is powerful. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Appreciate others who are vulnerable. Yeah, it always helps me to be around people who, it helps me to be around people who are vulnerable, and it kind of intimidates me at the same time because they're so secure. When someone's really vulnerable, they're really secure about something, right? When they can present something and be like, look at this thing. And you're like, wow, that's really intimate and honest. And they're like, isn't that great? Or whatever. Then that's really secure. Their ego isn't ruling everything. They're just like, oh yeah, I can present this and it's okay if you judge it. I can handle whatever comes my way. So now we're moving into the power part of vulnerability. Showing authenticity. Being honest with myself and trying to stay, well, yeah, this is all great. I can see my limits physically and mentally. Yeah, why is that helpful? Well, because then you don't fuck yourself up. right? It can be so practical. If I go to the gym and I know I have an injury, but I don't want to admit it, and I'm going to work out like I don't have an injury, and then you make it worse. I've done that, and I'll do it again. I know me, and then I'll hopefully I just catch on faster, and the injuries don't get as catastrophic. I'm getting better at catching my own game at avoiding the vulnerability. So if you can kind of think about how you have your own little game around, don't do that. And by the way, it's very subtle sometimes. You can't always catch it in the moment, but you will start to pay attention to these patterns. Finding people who really see me as I am. Isn't it wonderful to be able to be seen and to be understood? Everybody wants to be seen and to be understood and valued for that, right? Everybody just wants to be valued for who they are. But you can't ask for that if you're not willing to show up with it authentically. And I know that's hard. It's still hard for me. But remember, we're talking about practicing. It's like meditation. We're going to practice being vulnerable. So now, how can you practice being vulnerable in a way that you're safe? Right? Because there's all these signals that are like, no, 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 no. Don't do that. Don't say that. Don't say that. Well, don't do that. Don't show up that way. And I have some ways to approach vulnerability that I find that make it more palatable as an experience. Even first of all, I accept that I don't like it. And when I do that, I go, okay, I don't have to like it for it to be worthy to try to do. And then it eliminates a resistance and a roadblock. Great. Okay. I'm probably going to feel some snap back, even when I feel really good, right? Even if I'm really happy that I practice being vulnerable with somebody, I recognize that I might also feel a little tender afterward, or I might feel a little embarrassed about something, even if the other person isn't judging me at all. But I come to the table with some of that baggage. I come to the table with some of that trauma. So I have self-care stuff in place for it. And then I have a tape that I play in my head. I'm going to tell you the tape in a moment. So I'm just looking at some of the chat. Admitting to making a mistake. Yeah, Dr. Wu. Vulnerability and honesty. Yes. Yeah. That's rough. I feel you. And that's powerful. That is so powerful. Somebody looked up the definition of poverty in state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. That's the definition of vulnerable according to a dictionary online. So this is too confusing to me to use the term just mean openness. Yes. So I like this because it's smart. Somebody went and said, wait a minute, am I being open with the idea that I want to be open, or am I being vulnerable? And this is where language is really important. In the context of our work here with trauma, it is essentially the same thing. And when we talk about vulnerability in other contexts, there is, for some cultures, I would definitely say here in my country, in the United States, there's definitely a culture of do not let yourself be vulnerable because it's stupid and it's dangerous and you're going to get hurt, especially growing up in New York City or in other places I've grown up. I also grew up in New Mexico in a heavily gang-ruled area at the time. So yeah, no, there was definitely no vulnerability, was not safe there. So that's really where I want to bring this to you now, because I want to practice this. And then we're going to do a little bit of breath work around it. You can be vulnerable for the motivations that you've already stated. And here's how to get what you want. Assess that the person or the situation that you're interacting with is appropriate to bring vulnerability to. You don't have to everybody, because guess what? We don't live in a society yet or a culture yet. And I would say this is global, where people can really handle intimate exposure, vulnerability. And if you're in a place, and this is key, if you're in a, grew up in New York City, Harlem. Yeah, Dr. She knows. If you are in a place where you are expecting someone to rescue you emotionally or catch you when you open yourself up, then it's already a bad setup. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't expect to be respected and heard, but you have to do the work to assess that that is the group or the person you're relating to and with, or that's the situation, right? And not every situation is appropriate to bring a certain amount of vulnerable exposure, or you can also have a scale of vulnerability. Do I go all the way with it, or do I let a little bit out? You're in charge. You get to decide how much you get to share. There is no standard. Just stay connected with how you feel. So that's what we're going to do now. I would like for you, when we do this breath practice, and I want to make it really simple so that you have it for the future at any moment. You're in line at the bank, you're in the supermarket, you're commuting, you're in the car with so-and-so, whatever, you're at work. I want it to be really accessible. I want you to think about all the ways we've spoken about openness and vulnerability, your motivations, your resistance, and invite the resistance in. You don't have to say, oh, I'm not cool because I'm not vulnerable, or I'm not secure because I'm not vulnerable. You'll get there. It's okay. Just practice, just be open-minded. But you have to set yourself up to know that you have your back more than anybody else. Okay? That's the way I like to approach it. There are many different approaches, but you are okay. You are safe because you got you, and you know how much to share. You know how open to be so that you can also remain protected. So we are going to take a moment to feel our feet on the floor, or you can just settle into wherever you're sitting. And I like to put my hands on my thighs just so I have a sense of grounding. And you can close your eyes, or you can just keep them open, whatever you want. And as we're breathing and we're thinking about everything we've spoken of, all the possibilities of practicing vulnerability, openness, the disaster we could possibly invite, the connections that we could create, take a breath in all of that and feel the energy of all of that swirling inside of you, in your mind. What does it do to your energy? Do you get kind of hyped up? You get a little nervous? Okay, now with all that going on, start to settle deeper into your body. Maybe if your chin is up a little bit, you can drop it. Can you sink a little bit more into yourself? Soften your breath. If you were really breathing kind of rhythmically and strongly, just soften. Can you pretend that you're even about to fall asleep in a really happy way? That you're like, oh, the sheets feel so good and the room is a perfect temperature. And my cat's snuggling with me. Or whatever. And then as you connect to all of that and that comfort and that soothing, protected cocoon of your nap, your sleepy breath where nothing is wrong, nothing has to excite you. Think back to your motivations, your desires, and what being vulnerable could bring to you. And then you can slowly open your eyes and kind of like move around. Doesn't that feel like a much better place to approach being open with somebody? Yeah, and if you need to kind of do a little like, I like to shift my state of being in that way. When I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do something scary. Let me remind myself that there's a place inside of me that can feel completely secure and at peace. And I just want to quickly mention, because I know Virginia now has to take over with her wonderful earthbound framework so that we can finish this up, and I'll stay on for a little bit afterward to answer more questions. This is just one way to approach it. You can breathe and practice creating a persona of a warrior inside of you who's there to take care of you. You can breathe and practice I don't give a fuck attitude. This is who I am. Accept it, take it, don't, whatever. It's context dependent. So if you're like, how come I can't be vulnerable? Because it's complicated and no one is in school teaching little kids how to be vulnerable in a safe and effective way. That's why. So don't be mean to yourself. Okay. It's hard. Have some compassion. We don't know really how to do this. Like it's tough, but here are some tools. And with that, I thank you for playing along with me, because this is one of the hardest spaces for me to be in. So I feel seen and supported by everybody else sharing. So thank you so, so much. And I'll shut up so Virginia can take it now.
Wow, I didn't want you to stop just then. So everyone, do write down your takeaway from this amazing session. Something that stood out for you, something that you want to hold on to, write it to share it with us, with Mel, with your peers here in the Zoom room, and also so that you can really claim it and really write. There's a power in writing it down, to name it. And if you don't want to share it in the chat, you can write it down for yourselves. The replays will be available and you'll be emailed after the event. And if you have any issues, do email support@embodimentunlimited.com. And I know I grow tiresome, but I'll keep saying it. There is still time to invite other people to this. I personally feel, and a lot of us feel, this is amazing work and the world needs it right now, and it will be so much better if they get it. So do invite them to this event and the replays whilst they're still available. Share as widely as you can. It's, for those of you watching the replays and not watching the chat, it's www.embodimentunlimited.com/hidden-trauma/. And if you'd like to learn more, there is the courses, www.embodimentunlimited.com/trauma-is-your-superpower. And remember that, because it is your superpower. And we do have the courses with Ilan. I'll quickly share those. We do have loads more stuff coming up with Ilan and Daniela later, and Mel is on later as well. So for those of you in a time zone where you can do that, do catch her. I am tempted to stay up all night, but I'll do the self-care thing and catch it on the replay. These are the courses. There's the accessible one to heal your trauma, the essentials for everyone for being okay in your day-to-day lives. If you want to go from good to great, is the personal superpowers course with more content on. And if you're a facilitator and you want to get your clients as well as yourself to access and hone in on those superpowers, then the package for the facilitators is for you. And there are limited spaces available in the first one and in the second one and in the third one. So do, without rushing yourselves, really take time to feel if this is the right decision. And if it's not, there's other stuff out there. There's EMDR, TRE, somatic experience. There's loads of different kinds of work. So you will find something for you, but we feel we're behind this one. I started the course with Ilan and oh my God, I rewatched the first 3 modules 3 times. And I'm going to rewatch them again because they're so good, because the feeling I got after was amazing. So yeah, thank you all for coming. I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much, Mel. Thank you.
I'm so grateful to all the contributions in the chat box. I see, if I don't say everything, it's just because of time constraints, but I see it all. And it's very nice that people are complimentary to me as a speaker, especially when you're like, I hope it's landing correctly, because Zoom is a little weird like that. But I want you to know that it's only this good, and I can only show up with that information because as a group we are coming together and the collective energy means something. So thank you for being here. This is all good because we are in it together. We're doing this so that we can heal, and then everybody else can heal around us. Think of what the world would be like if we practiced vulnerability more in the intelligent and safe boundary ways I was just talking about. And that's the kind of thing that makes me emotional and rageful, because I'm like, no more. I can't I can't single-handedly get rid of all human suffering, but together we can start to create a pretty big shift. So thank you for being here. I mean that. Vulnerability.